Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Growth Circle podcast with Adriano and Vivian. We have a very special guest in house today, one of our favorite people on the planet, Mansoor, the Sheikh Shack. How do you say your last name? Alzayer?
Alzayer.
But
you could just call me the Sheikh.
The Sheikh. We got the Sheikh. But no, you're not on camera yet. Like, take it easy. I know you're excited. All right. So we have.
I am excited.
I know you are. So am I. We got Viv in the house. And we'll applaud for Viv because she likes to be applauded. There we go.
I just would like to correct him because it's the Growth Circle with Vivian and Adriano. Vivian's first.
I mean, I saw your face and I did it on purpose.
Well, it's written right behind you, so I don't need to say it.
I think
it's right there.
We're gonna have to have that changed. But anyway, that's nor here nor there. And of course, our guest of honor, we got Mansoor in the house. Mansoor, welcome. Let's just keep it going.
Thank you for having me. What's cracking everybody?
Crack-a-lackin', I like it. So we wanted to have you on today because it is true you're one of our favorite people.
One of.
I got many favorites. Luca's one of them. My son. So yeah, I mean,
so
Austin's
we are going to be
one.
political in this podcast.
Well, we have no choice because I have to be because I have to counter. Let's put it on. I mean, like what's in this chair. I need to counterbalance this because there's so much fire from that and Latina energy.
So much fire.
All the stuff that attracted me to Miami in the first place. I have to be the sane one.
I'm not quite sure if that was a positive thing or a negative thing.
Otherwise, I'd still be engineering and like hating my job and the whole thing. So I love you for everything you've given to me.
It was the first part, which was like I have to balance something.
Counterbalance. You counterbalance me too.
Okay,
we're going to move on. And so we wanted to have you on here, Mansoor, because I have rarely seen a leader of a group of individuals as focused and determined as you. And when I say that, what I mean by that is, people can have teams or like even when I played sports, being a captain of a hockey team, you're always giving 120%. And sometimes people are the captains or they're given that position because they're just the most talented and the most gifted. And that doesn't equate to being the best leader for a group. So it's more of a look at my accolades and I'm the best and, I'm better than everyone. That's why I'm wearing the C on my chest. And the thing with you is that you're so selfless. And I've rarely seen that in a leader where you'd be willing to fall on the sword for your team. And so that's why I'm so happy to have you in our studio, and I just want to get to it and talk a little bit more about you and what you're doing here. So if you can, I guess, just give us a quick intro on who you are.
Well, first of all, man, I'm honored, and I hope that doesn't change, man. I hope this is just not a honeymoon phase between us, man.
I don't know. I don't think it will be.
Viv's impression of me was I learned a new word. What is it called? Metrosexual. I didn't know if that was an insult or a compliment, but I actually like it now. So that's the reason why I showed up today.
You were definitely a metrosexual. So is my husband, just so you know.
So I didn't know what that word meant. But then they gave me an example of David Beckham. I said, all right, cool. Yeah, well, whatever that word means, I'll take David Beckham every single day of the week.
Well, that was just one of the words. There were some other ones. But then, I got to know you and I was like, okay, he's not like that. It was just an impression.
Correct. And the thing is, I'm going to have to be very quick on the controls because this is like rapid fire cutting over here. So if you see me glancing or like in a daze, it's because I'm trying to keep up with these two. But yeah, Viv, I'll let you do the questioning now since Mansoor and I have already exchanged pleasantries here.
Yes. Well, Mansoor, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you come from. Just a quick intro so people get to know you, get to understand a little bit of, your background.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Mansoor Alzayer. I call myself the Sheikh. Just to make it a lot easier on you, Sheikh Mansoor. My grandfather used to call me.
He calls himself the Sheikh.
And
hold on. Let me just stop you for a minute.
That didn't take long.
He calls himself the Sheikh.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about for a minute. In a little bit, we're going to talk about the fact that he calls himself the Sheikh.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Yeah, of course. And the reason why is because This is what my grandfather used to call me growing up, and I chose business, and obviously I come from Saudi Arabia, so I have the right to play that character. Nobody else can do that, right? That's something Adriano, you got Italy here in the house. He could be the mafioso. I can't be. Although some people tell me that I could pass for Italian, but not when Adriano's
like
in the
a
house.
Southern Italian,
like a Southern Italian, like from Sicily. There you go.
You got the skin tone. Man.
Okay, there you go.
There
At least that. So I used to tell people that I'm half Italian, right? Because I lived there for half a year in 2006 when they won the World Cup. Yeah, exactly.
I would have loved to be there.
They're asking me to come back because they haven't won a World Cup since.
Well, they haven't qualified for the last two, so we won't talk about that.
Okay,
that's a different
let's not
podcast.
talk about that. Let's not stir some emotions.
Very sore topic between me and him and the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're
Brazil. Oh my God, how does that happen in the World Cup, man? I want to attend the
happen. You know what the best part of that is? Hold on, when we're not in the World Cup, and then they're just destroying these nothing teams, and then they're up 6-0 and they're doing the samba. I'm like, you freaking wait, until you play a real team. And then I'm going to be doing the samba.
Well, the last time that I was waiting for them to play a real team, we were in the World Cup and yours weren't there at all.
I'd rather not be there than lose and disgrace myself.
Your real team because they weren't there. So just saying.
Oh, well, I just remember the 6-1 or 6-0.
Oh my God, there you go.
Germany.
There's trash talking right there.
All right, well, let's focus.
Okay, back to you, Mansoor.
Back to the topic. So no, I come from Saudi Arabia. I was born in California, but I lived most of my life in Saudi Arabia. I came to the States for college. I graduated from high school. I was almost I was a 4.0 in high school, and I thought I was really, really smart, that Harvard and MIT and all the Ivy Leagues are going to take me. And then I realized I have to take this test called SAT. I'm like, what the hell is an SAT, man? I got perfect.
To this day, I don't even know what that is.
I'm like, what? I don't know what that stands for, to be honest with you, but it's some aptitude test. And anyways, I got humbled very, very quickly because in Saudi Arabia, the best company to work for is the oil giant of the world. You guys could Google it. It's called Saudi Aramco. It's a $2 trillion company. It might not be as sexy as Amazon or Facebook, but whenever you're in Saudi Arabia, that's the company that you want to work for. So I graduated from college, and I applied for the scholarship program that they have. And when you get admitted, I got admitted, blessed to be part of that company, but they have a whole year called College Preparatory Program, CPP. And that's like a filtration system where they want to make sure that, sure, you got a 4.0 in college, but you could have just cheated your butt off. I'm sorry, in high school, right? So they want to make sure that you're actually going to survive being educated in a Western system, like in the United States or in the UK. And so during that year is where you apply for a school, right? And so I applied to a lot of Ivy Leagues. Wharton School of Business, UPenn was my dream school. It was the first to reject me, and I got just rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna end up at like a tier 3 university with all of the guys who cheated from me in high school. And that's exactly what happened. And I was crushed, man, because although I was, academically, I was a high performer, I never wanted to get into engineering. If you're working for Aramco, the best, major to have is petroleum. But I'm like, if I became an engineer and I came back, I'd be stuck in the system because that would be like the best place to work for. And I'd have I wanted to compete globally. So I chose finance, and everybody was like, dude, but you're smart. That was the response I got from my family. I chose finance as a major, and people were like, yeah, but you're smart. Like, what happened? And so the chip on my shoulder began since then, right? I did not get into the school I wanted to get to. I went into my first 2 years, my freshman and my sophomore was in West Virginia University, which was a party school. That's not a school I wanted to graduate from. I got 4.0s just to transfer out because to me, I was super ashamed for me to even be in that school. I'm like, I worked my butt off. And I wanted to graduate from a highly established university just so that I could be competitive worldwide. I did not want to limit myself to the country, right? And so I transferred. I got accepted to BU. And I transferred to Boston. And then a year before my graduation, I was very depressed. I was very depressed because I've come a long way. And then it was only one semester away from going back home. And if I were to go back home, then I'd be stuck there for at least 5 years, which is the same amount of years that they sponsored me for. So I cannot break my contract for at least 5 years. And that thought terrified me because my thinking at that time is, if only I had more time, how far can I go in this country? That was my thought process. If I had more time, how far can I go? Because I witnessed how far I've developed, right? I came here not speaking much English, and now like I have a pretty awesome life. I'm like, man, if I only had more time, man, I could become a billionaire in this place, man, right? and so what I did,
The American dream right there.
Exactly. I thought an American dream was buying a house. Maybe I was
Well, that's what they want you.
right.
That's what they want you to think. White picket fences and buy yourself get yourself a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. So my the challenge then was, what can I do to stay? You know, is there anything I could do? Can I legitimately pull this off? Because they have the right to come after me and sue me for all the amount of money that they put in me.
Yeah, they invested in you.
It was a very risky move. I found a place in Dubai. It was a franchise. My first business was a franchise. I took a flight to Dubai, and it was a very simple concept. My first business was actually selling corn. You know, are you familiar with? I thought I was. You know, this was super genuine. Like super novel. I thought I came up with it. I thought nobody had ever. But then I realized Mexicans call it elote. Are you familiar with that? Like the corn in a cob, and then you put some cheese on top, and
That's
Mexican street corn is what they
Mexican
call it.
street corn, exactly.
It's one of my favorite things on earth.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
the
great.
Saudi
Ricardo's
Arabian.
too. Ricardo,
Saudi Arabian
I'm
street
the
corn.
Saudi Arabian who brought street corn to Simon Malls, and I failed miserably. I went bankrupt, practically bankrupt.
You brought street corn to Saudi Arabia?
I brought street corn to Boston, Massachusetts. I opened a kiosk in the middle of the mall where we would steam these Malaysian corn kernels. They were whole corn. Oh my God, they were so tasty. They were a whole cut corn. It's like a full kernel of corn. So whenever you eat it, it's so juicy in the inside, it would
Mansoor,
pop.
did you do any market research before you launched this company?
No. I just wanted to leave.
He just had some street corn somewhere, and then he decided he was going to bring it to Boston because it was too cold there in the winter.
This is the extent of my market research. All you got to do is steam some corn in the freaking steamer, put some flavors on it, and go. $10, baby. That's it, right? And by the way, in Dubai, it was like you would see this in every. It was such a simple concept that they would put a small kiosk in like every shopping mall when you go to the movie theater. But what I did not account for is that in Dubai, it's extremely hot. So everybody, their entertainment is going to shopping malls.
Correct.
There's a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos who I happen to have a grudge on because he took all the traffic away from shopping malls. This was 2016. It was the first time ever where Black Friday sales online beat actual sales in person, right? So the traffic was going away. Companies were not responding to economics. Rent was extremely high. I was paying $5,500 a month for a small kiosk. Traffic was very low. This is an impulsive purchase. It's dependent on traffic. You know, it would work in like a theme park, like Six Flags, right? So within a span of less than 12 months, I went from living in a high-rise apartment in Cambridge to living in a getting evicted from my spot. My only resort was a Craigslist post. I lived inside a one-bedroom apartment inside an old lady's house in Salem, Massachusetts, which is the capital of the witch and the Halloween spot, right? And within a span of 12 months, I closed the business, and I was practically bankrupt. I didn't have anything to my name. And that's when I got involved in the insurance industry.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you came from an environment where it was expected of you to join the petroleum industry.
Correct.
The company backed your schooling.
Yes.
And you didn't want to have any of it, so much so that you went into finance and everyone was like, well, you're intelligent. And that's another question I have, and we'll come back to that. And then you just went your own way because you were so determined to build your own thing for yourself and reach your goals that you didn't care what the norm was or the status quo was coming from where you came back home. What was that like going up against family, friends, culture, expectations? No, Mansoor, Sheikh Mansoor, you need to be doing this because that's what our family does. Mm-hmm. That's where we've worked. You're the next generation. Dude, that takes fucking guts. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but like, how was that? Talk us through it, because I'm like, shit. I had an easy time compared to that, but what was that like? What was that like for you?
It's tough. I mean, it scars me until this day. I just came back from Greece and the wedding. I'm sitting all alone for 4 hours. Like, this is boring. I can't relate to these guys.
Yeah,
Right? I love my family. I don't like them, but I love them. Right? Not everybody, obviously,
No, of
but
course.
there's a cost to be paid. There's a cost. There's a hefty price. There's a hefty price. I slept for. I mean, I don't consider myself. I haven't made it by any means, but relative to where I come from, I've came a long way. And for the first 3 years, I slept in my car, man. You know, it got to a point where I had no money, like zero, literally zero. All I had was dreams. All I had hope, and I had an aunt who loved me like her own child, and she would send me money every now and then. She didn't have any kids, but she was a doctor, and she knew that I was in a tough spot, and that's how I survived, man. I left Boston. I got recruited into the insurance industry in Boston, and then it dawned on me. After a while, our office was not gaining any traction. And then I told myself, why am I limiting myself in Boston? Like, I moved from Saudi Arabia to Boston. How about I go work with the top earner in the entire company? That's when I moved to Chicago, because I needed to shadow an example, right? So I called my mentor at the time. Shout out to Matt Zapala, money smart guy. I love that guy. He's my older brother, right? He's the guy who taught me the insurance industry. But I shadowed him. I didn't make money there. I acquired the skill, and it took two years or so, two years and a half. I would drive him to the news station. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. just to see how he moved, just to see how he interacted. Even until this day, the way that I talk is because it's a byproduct of even my gestures in my hand and whatnot. It's the same way that I needed to shadow an example. Mind you, I didn't make much money. Like, my breakthrough happened in the pandemic in 2020 when I went back home, right? But that's what I ended up going to Chicago to shadow a mentor, and I would rent a cubicle for $200 a month. I was sharing that cubicle with 2 other people because it was $600, and I would go to my Toyota Prius at the end of the night and sleep there, wake up and work out at Planet Fitness and shower, put a suit on, and go prospect. Right? Go prospect, build connections. I went to Chicago not knowing anyone, zero, and my task was to build a network from scratch. So during this entire 2-3 year process, you know, you could imagine how many phone calls I got from my father. Your cousin just did this. Your cousin just bought this house. You know, just admit it. You failed. My uncle did not talk to me for 18 months. By the way, I love my uncle. I love my dad. You know, we had a blast in Greece. But, you know, they did not support my decision. My grandfather would call me and he's like, hey, when are you going to stop dreaming? When is this going to fade away? I'm like, you don't understand. I'm committed. And, you know, Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, die rich or, you know, get rich or die trying. That's where my confidence came from, is that it became so personal to me that there was nothing that would rob me from my dreams. I knew that I was willing to endure so much pain that nobody else would do, but it was because, hey, I have a duty. I've come this far. I'm the only guy. But by the way, the Sheikh did not exist. That's an alter ego that I had to develop because I had so much insecurities back then, and you know, it's damaging. I damaged a lot of relationships in the process. A lot of people that I expected to support me did not support me at all.
So did you ever think of selling yourself out?
Meaning what?
Succumbing to the pressure and just saying fuck all this.
No, because then I proved them right.
Yeah. So it was like, obviously it was personal for you, but like I think that so many people sell themselves short right when they're when they're at their lowest low. I think that's when you can make the biggest gains, because I mean, you have nothing else to lose.
Exactly.
And so it's a shame when I see people that are right at that breakthrough moment. And then they just say, oh, it's too much pressure. I'm just going to give it all up. This doesn't work. But it's like, man, if they had just held on a little longer, they would have broken out of the mold and had some success. And then you get that positive momentum going like you have. And so that's why your story is so compelling. It's because like you literally went against the establishment, and like everything was laid out for you. All you had to do, all Sheikh Mansoor had to do was like just step onto that first brick and become the sheikh, right? But a different sheikh than you are now, of course.
Let me add something here. I think when I hear your story, when I look at you and I see the person that you are, because today, and we're going to get to how we met and how I got to know you. But today, I know the person that you are, right? I know who you truly are. Like the Mansoor without the sheikh and the Mansoor with the sheikh. Two very different people, right? But when I hear this story, the thing that comes to my mind is faith.
Yeah.
And I gave a speech about this at convention, right? Which is a man of faith can't be bothered with. A man of faith, like nobody can do anything to a man of faith because they will die fighting for their dreams. And what I'm hearing is basically you were a young man, you're going to school, you're trying to find your place in the world. Everybody else around is telling you, hey, you should be doing this, but you know in your guts what it is that you truly want to accomplish for yourself. And even though everything around you is telling you go this other way, you had faith in yourself. And I know that's very hard because for me it was the same thing. When I was young, I was 22 years old, pregnant, running a business, trying to figure it out, like what I was gonna do with my life. I used to be a very successful actress in Brazil. Very successful. Wow, like, why would you live? You didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was an actress since I was 7 years old.
No
and I
kidding.
left Brazil to go to film school. Yeah. And I end up.
Viv was the Mary-Kate and Ashley of Brazil.
Oh,
yeah,
it was.
I
wouldn't put them on.
I was a very successful actress. I was going to school to be a director, a film director, and I was supposed to go back to Brazil. And I end up, when I came. I went to Canada to go to film school, and when I got there, and Brazil and Canada and the US is very different. So I got there, and the first night I was there, I was living, with a Canadian family. And the first night at 2:00 in the morning, I woke up and I was hungry, and I went down the street to Young and Bloor, and I bought a piece of pizza at 2:00 in the morning.
What was
I was walking in the street.
From where?
Like from a few streets over.
No. What was the place? What was it called? Pizza, Little Caesar.
Oh, it was
What
Pizza was my favorite. Yeah,
that's a very Canadian
and
thing.
I lived at Bathurst Street, and I walked over to Young and Bloor, which is like a few blocks over, and that was at 2:00 in the morning. To me, that moment it was like, I will never go back to Brazil because this freedom right here, I will never be able to have this type of freedom in my life. And at that moment, I became a woman of faith. And it didn't matter what was going to happen in my life. I gave up on my career. I gave up on I was still going to film school. I still wanted to be a director, but I knew that I wasn't going back there. I knew that my purpose was here. So I understand what you're telling me when you're telling that story, because that's exactly what happened to me. But I was still 20 years old. I was a kid. I had no idea what I was gonna do with my life. I did know that I had a purpose. And when you figure it out that you have to go from a caterpillar to a butterfly, and you just don't know how just yet, but you do know that you do need to make that change. It is life-changing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing. Your faith, and then you had to create that alter ego. Yeah. And my first alter ego was my Vivian Storms was my previous name. I got married, I became a businesswoman, and I made this alter ego, which was, my previous self. And then at some point I realized that I had to let go of that alter ego and become this other person. And I had to reinvent myself several times. But if it wasn't for every single one of those transformations, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's what I'm hearing, the faith and the confidence on somebody that you had to become to be able to become the person that you want to be, that you were today. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. It's not only faith in yourself; it's faith in God. I'm not sure who said this, but God doesn't put a dream in your heart just to mess with you. You feel. You go through moments in life, you go through experiences where you have a calling. I'm the only guy who was born in the United States. So I'm a dual, I have the US passport. So I have an option that's available at my disposal that nobody else has, right? So for me, it's like, hey, what if everybody asks the question of what if, right? What if? To me, I got to a point where I knew going into business was very risky and odds were against me. However, it got to a point where, when I think about that, it got to a point where I have two options. Either I go back home and then I work for 5 years and then I tell myself, then I'm going to go pursue my dreams. By the way, how many times do we hear that? Everybody's like, all right, well, then okay. I knew that was not going to happen. 5 years from now, I'm probably married with twins. Like, my risk tolerance is not going to be the same as when I'm in the system and I'm comfortable. Then it's like, hey, you're handcuffed. Then you're focused on your career goals and whatnot. Okay. Or I take this massive risk right now, and chances are that I will fail because odds are against me. Let's be objective about that. Business is not easy. But then what? Then would I rather go back home and wonder the rest of my life what could have happened?
Yeah.
Imagine waking up at 36. We wake up in the middle of the night. You take a look at your wife. You're like,
that's a pretty brutal example, man.
No. But how many people actually go through that? But no one hears that conversation. It remains in that. No one is ever going to know. Yeah. You take a look at your kids, and then deep inside, you have some form of resentment because you did not go after your dreams. At some point you settled. At some point you conformed to what was expected of you. Okay. I watched my mom grow up, and I get my ambition from my mom, but my mom was extremely ambitious, and she's still ambitious until this very day, and she's still going at it in business. She never had her big breakthrough, but she was always, I could tell that she did not live the life that she wanted to live. My dad wanted to become a millionaire. Okay. He may be a millionaire now after he retired, and he's 60. Right. Yeah. Right. So he never really pursued what he wanted to pursue. Mind you, we have a phenomenal life. We have a great life. We're very blessed, but it was not what they wanted to do. So to me, I took it as, hey, why not take that challenge? Why not become that person? Not only for my family, but for my town. To me, it was like, hey, whenever you graduate from college, where I come from, you're either going to become an engineer, right, if you're smart, or you're going to go into business if you're not that smart. And if you're really dumb, you're going to become a teacher. Why is it that we're limited by these options? Why? We have so much talent, but because of where we come from, there is discrimination. We cannot attain, for example, if I were to go back to the company I was working with, there is absolutely no way. If I was the most competent person in there is no way I would become the CEO. Zero. I could be this. There's no way, just because of where I come from and the city. I was like, you know what, dude, no.
Yeah,
I'm never going to go there, right? So I wanted to become that person who goes out and be like, hey guys, watch this. Okay, watch this. I got it. You guys are not man enough to do what I'm about to do. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go build it. And then I'm going to come back and I'll be like, here you go, guys. I've done it. And it's that same story of Roger Bannister, right? That it was not believed. I'm not sure if this is a myth or if it's true, but it was not believed that you could walk a mile. You could run a mile in 4 minutes until he did it.
Yeah.
Right. And then once he did it, the most amazing part is that 2 weeks later, 30 some people did it. So it was a mental limitation, not a physical one. So I wanted to become the Roger. That's my goal, is to become the Roger Bannister of my town, to take my people mentally. Hey, we're not limited by the option that's available to us right now. We could actually go out and do something that has never been done. And that's what drives me. It's do something that's never been done. And for people to doubt you and tell you you're never going to get there and be like, all right, well, look at me now.
That's amazing.
That's it.
That's amazing. I mean, I think that everybody has that driving, motivating factor behind what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes it's just as simple as being real with yourself. Like, you weren't willing to sell yourself short just because of what was expected of you. And I admire that about you a lot, because I certainly didn't follow that path. Now, I was always told I can do whatever I want with my life. This is funny. So we were having a conversation with my mother-in-law, Viv's mom, and she was asking about, like, Owen, and say, hey, what does he want to become? Has he expressed anything that he'd like to become in school?
Sure.
And I was like, he's 13 years old. And then she's like, well, because Vivian knew she always wanted to be an actress, and Eduardo,
that's my mom for you.
And Eduardo, but it's, you have to understand, they like, that's the upbringing, that's the expectation, it's the culture, whatever. It's the, like, that's who she is, and that's fine. And that's not a knock on her at all. I've seen it in the Italian culture too. It's like, hey, you're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or an engineer.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, he's 13 years old. I didn't say anything because I know better. So Vivian was like, he's 13 years old. How can he know what you want? Oh, well, you knew that you wanted to become an actress, and Eduardo knew he wanted to be a lawyer at 13 years old. And, you know, he should know what he wants to do by now. And I'm like, man, I was going to university, and I went into engineering. I didn't even know if I wanted to be an engineer. And it turns out I didn't.
Sure.
So, and here I am. So it's very hard. Even in this moment, it's always like, you're always like thinking, what's next? How can we make this better? What can we develop? What can we build? Life doesn't start and stop with the expectations that your culture or your society or your town puts upon you, like, or lays down for you. You can't, I mean, you gotta, at some point, you gotta realize that you're your own person, and you're here. You were born of a family to give you certain conditions to be able to decide for yourself what it is that you want in this lifetime. And that's my belief. And so, yeah, man, that's kind of it. Like, that's so good on you, man. That's really, really amazing.
No, dude, I'll tell you this, man. I mean, and there is still, I mean, for the people who are listening to this, I mean, we've crossed some milestones, but we haven't arrived yet. I mean, and I'm inspired by you guys, because when I started knowing, I mean, we've known each other technically for a few months, but it's like we've known each other forever, just because of the instant connection, right? And sometimes you need to meet someone who is much successful than you, who's at a higher level than you. Maybe they're ahead in life than you are, just for you to realize how great you can become. Because when I met you guys, I'm like, wait, hold on a second. That kind of rewind, without you guys even knowing it. But when I met you guys, I'm like, whoa, I kind of underestimated what's possible for me. Because if I have you in my corner and your experience of what you've been able to accomplish, I have no doubt that I'm not going to quit. So it's destined to happen. And it's coming from a fundamental belief, because entrepreneurship is a different language. And that's what I realized, like, coming back from Greece, I'm telling you guys, it was not the best. It was what I was looking for, but not what I expected. It stirred the fire in me, because I don't relate to a lot lot of people now. Yeah, I felt
that's me and Adriano.
I felt
don't
like
relate a lot to most people.
I felt like a fish out of the water. I was like, this sucks. Like, this sucks. I felt estranged, right? And no one was interested enough to know what's happening in my life. Not no one, right? But for the most part, we grew apart. And it's because my language has changed. Not only the distance plays a role, but my language and my lens is very different. But it is a language. And once you adapt that language, then you're able to speak it, and then the results are going to follow. So the fundamental belief that I had that made me, if you were to ask me, why did you continue believing? Faith is one part of it, but it was also a realization that I was the problem. Not the company, not the industry. I was the problem. All these guys came and they were successful, right? So it was me. I needed to develop. I needed to grow. I needed to become a different person. I needed to create an alter ego. I needed to read books. I needed to acquire a skill set. It was me. And my dad, I recall this one time, my dad called me. It was a Sunday night. I just finished a leadership call, and my dad called me, and he was screaming, man. And and we were going at it. And at that time, like, my dad doesn't know that I'm walking to my car to go to sleep, right? And like, they're not even aware of my conditions at all. But he just went berserk on me, man.
How long ago was that?
This was, I want to say 2019, right? Gotcha. This was 2019. And at that time, and like, my dad is like, hey, just admit it. You failed. Give up. Like, there's so much opportunity out for you. Saudi Arabia is just, changing. It's growing. There's so much that you can do. Just come back. And I was so super like, nope, I'm staying. Why? Because I knew that I wasn't the person that I needed to become in order for me to attain success. I needed to grow. And that's exactly what happened, because when I left the company, all the skills that I acquired, I went from 0 to 3 million in 12 months.
So that was an insurance company that you used to work with before,
Correct.
right? So you built a team.
Correct.
So walk us through so people would know kind of like what happened there. So you got into the insurance industry, you moved to Chicago, you started shadowing your mentor.
Yeah.
You learned the business, and then you built a team of how many people?
In total, my agency in the 5 years, I recruited roughly 200 to 250 people.
So you were there for 5 years. You recruited 250 people.
Correct.
Okay, and just so people understand, that's an insurance agency that for people to come in and work with you, they had to pay for it, right?
Correct. So it's high volume recruiting, right? And people would start their own business. So there was a initiation fee of roughly, I think it was $199, like $200.
So you're recruiting these people,
yeah,
to work with you.
correct,
What comp?
30%.
You recruit.
Yeah.
Hold on, I need to breathe for a second. Hold on. You recruited 250. You had 250 people writing in your agency at a 30% contract,
And we're not writing. We're recruited.
Oh,
but
recruited.
not necessarily. Writing,
Okay.
yeah.
And they had to pay $200 to start with you.
Correct.
And they were at a 30% contract.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, got it. So, and then what was the agency doing?
My agency there?
Yeah.
We were not doing much. I was the only person who was making decent money. And it's because that was, I mastered the art of recruiting, right? It was throughout that process that I was able to scale so much. But recruiting was basically your avenue for you to get leads, because you will not be, you're not buying leads and calling them to sell them over the phone. You needed to recruit someone to quote unquote get into their market and go to their family and friends. So that was not scalable. It got to a point where I'm sleeping in a car, and my biggest recruit, my biggest quote unquote leg, was sleeping next to me.
Oh boy.
You guys were just keeping each other warm.
He's in the passenger seat. Now, mind you,
We laugh now, right?
Yeah,
But it's not funny
yeah,
at the time.
I recruited this guy from Boston, my running mate, right? He was in school.
Yeah.
He quit school, right? He was going to go into real estate. I said, no, man, you got to check out insurance. And then he moves with me. He follows me from Boston to Chicago. And one night, I'm sleeping in my car, and he's sleeping in the passenger seat. And my mom calls me 3 a.m. and we get into a fight. Okay, and I'm screaming. And by the way, I mean, I'm a devout religious, I hope, Muslim, right? So, you don't shout at your mom. You don't even
Well, nobody should shout at their mother.
Yeah, like that was very out of character of me, right? Very out of character. But the memory is so vivid because I was super emotional and I was screaming, and he's sleeping next to me, right? And it was just like when you're in the middle of war and you're in the midst of war, you don't want someone to inject limitations. Like I'm fighting the very programming that you put in me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I need you to maintain your distance, because I'm trying to overcome a program and override a program here. I'm creating this alter ego, right? Because I need to become a different person. And so it was that realization that made me realize that, hey, we're selling people a dream, but I'm seeing their life deteriorate.
That's the one thing I'm the most terrified of.
Yeah.
Because when Adriano and I came to the industry, I was an entrepreneur. He was getting into entrepreneurship, breaking all of those programmings from being an employee and the whole thing. But I was an entrepreneur. I knew what it took, and I knew that if it only depended on me, I was going to make it happen. However, I did learn about the industry, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the people that recruited me, for the people that taught me a lot of what I know today.
Same.
If it wasn't for that mentorship, if it
100%.
wasn't for that help, I wouldn't be the writer I am today, the leader and so forth. So I'm very grateful for that.
100%.
But I remember all the corporate overviews and all the people talking about the opportunity, and it was, I think it was not as bad as where you were at, but I could understand that a lot of the people that I would see on top, they were making money on the very, very, very top. But all of the people that were coming into the industry at that compensation starting at 60% contract, you know, and you having to buy leads, and you having to recruit, and you have to get recruiting leads, and all of the expenses that you had, there was no way you could actually reach the potential that they were selling you or survive. And I came in like, listen, when I came in, I'm talking to the guy that hired me, and I asked him, and he's like, oh, this person makes this money, this person makes this money, this money. And I'm like, okay, how much money do you make? And then he told me that he had made $400,000 that year. And I was like, $400,000, and you have an agency with this many people. Okay, we can start there. But the reality is, with time, I figured out that was not, there was no way that you could make that money with that level of contract unless you weren't in the field producing yourself with a high comp. Time passes, we moved, we changed our brokerage. Aria Life is like with the best platform we can possibly think of right now.
100%.
And now we have the income, and we have the opportunity, and we have everything. But the thing is, when we recruit people, when we bring people in, it's that realization. I'm telling you that if I give you everything you need to be able to have the life I have, you can actually get there. And I take that so seriously, because whenever my leaders or my agents or anybody in our organization fails, and a lot of people fail, they fail because they're not coachable. They fail because they're not willing to do what it takes. They fail because their mindset's a mess. They fail because many reasons. But we have a lot of people that succeed too. So for me, every single time somebody fails, I take it personally, because I know we have the best. But I don't think I would be able to live with myself being on that situation, because you were bringing people in, you're selling a dream, but this dream doesn't exist. Does that sound right?
Yeah. It's the dream is there. There are people who are able to make that happen. It's knowing that it's really not going to work for them. You know, it's really not going to. I'm not going to say it's not going to work. But when you're in a GPS, if you have any destination, let's just say you're planning on going from Miami to Georgia, right? And you know obviously you don't know the road, so you're going to use a GPS, and you have multiple routes. Well, which route do you usually take?
The shortest one.
Thank you. It's just what path do you want to take? I want to take the shortest one. You know that there is a longer path to get there. It's still going to get me there, but it's going to take a lot.
And it's,
I think that in this case, like, don't misconstrue what if they're listening to that, the shortest path. Sometimes like people want to take shortcuts. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about getting in the fastest vehicle.
Correct.
And traveling the same path and getting there way quicker than the next person.
Correct.
Got it.
And there's a few things that play a part on getting into the fastest vehicle. One of them is going to be your comp level. It's going to be the platform you're utilizing. If you have contracts, if you actually own your business. Like, that's the thing. The company that we used to be with before, we didn't own our business. We're coming in, we're recruiting, we're paying for the recruiting, we're paying for the leads, we're paying for everything. But if we wanted to leave and we wanted to change platforms, or we wanted to change the broker, we couldn't do that, because we'd have to leave everything we've built behind, because we don't own it. They own it. We didn't own our book of business. The other thing is leadership.
Sure.
Like having real leadership, people that will teach you how to do the job because they've done and they have a track record. You know, I think that people underestimate the value of culture. You know, having a culture that will get people to believe in themselves, even though, you know, this business, you're going to go through a learning curve. And if you don't have the culture to bring it all together and to keep it in place. So how, since then, let's just move forward. Since then, you left that company, that was a little bit of that trajectory for you since making that change.
Yeah. So what happened was I was going through a time when it was the pandemic was the best years, right? That was when the insurance industry adapted to doing everything over Zoom, and that's really that was a game changer. I mean, COVID was a game changer. I hear some people. I don't know if we could say COVID in this podcast, but hey, if anybody's listening to this, COVID. If anybody's listening to this and you guys want to bring that, you know, stuff back.
I mean, if you want to get into COVID, we can record a separate podcast altogether. That would be very interesting.
I'm just saying I'm not opposed to it. You know, if it wants to make a comeback, please come back. You know, we need to see.
Well, I'm going to fight you on that one. I don't want to see it anywhere.
No, well, look, all I'm saying is that was the best time for our agency because we went virtual. We were not virtual before that. It was all in person. And I was stuck in the States for 5 years. I couldn't see my family for 5 years because it was all in person, right? And it's like having a baby when you begin a business. You cannot leave. So I was stuck. But when COVID happened, the insurance industry was forced to adapt.
Yeah, to adapt.
And they were accepting e-signatures and all of that stuff. And I'm like, wait, holy crap. I could be like one of those YouTubers like sitting in the ocean, right? by the ocean and be like, hey, I'm here on my laptop and right? All these ads that I used to see back in the day. Yeah. So when that happened, I was in Saudi Arabia and I was able to scale sitting from home. And that to me was a feeling like I've never experienced before because I'm like, wait, I'm with my parents. All I got to do is switch my time clock. I would wake up at 3 p.m. I didn't go to sleep until like 8 a.m., but I was totally fine with that because I was super focused. And I would do that every day of the week if I could just go spend an hour with my grandfather. Right. And everything was virtual online. So that was the time when our agency expanded. But unfortunately, what happened was my practice company, they decided to turn back to in person after COVID died. So I came back to Chicago at that time. And I couldn't go back to that in-person model. I just couldn't go back because I did too well. I did very good, you know, virtual. That, you know, the force of having to come back to the office and do things like I felt it was going. I felt like we were going in the wrong direction. Yeah, of course. We were going backwards. In addition to the fact that I couldn't self-rescue myself. You know, although I was producing, it just, you know, the agency that we were with obviously was a lot of underwriting. It was all underwriting. There's no such thing as simplified issue. Simplified issue to me was like, what is this?
So you're saying everything was fully underwritten, medical exams and the whole 9 yards.
Yes,
that's craziness.
So what happened was I went back home. I went back to Chicago to attend a wedding. This was my best friend in Chicago. He still is my best friend, but he's a big client of mine, and he invited me to the wedding. So I went back, and so he has an exotic car rental company, and I was only there for the wedding. And so after the wedding, I would hang out with him in exotic cars, obviously Rolls, Lamborghinis, all that. I'm like, this is like a man cave for me, man. Yeah. But I applied what I learned from my agency and the insurance company that I ran to help him grow his exotic car rental company. So before I left, he's like, hey, man, like, can you stay? Like, depending on how much you want to pay. Yeah. Right. And he cut a check for me. Right. This was in August. In December, we had a falling out. Okay. We wanted to take the company in one direction. He wanted to take the company a different direction. I'm like, dude, this is my best friend. And now I have a falling out with him. Yeah. My best friend in the entire world, I had a falling out with him, and we're still not talking till this very day, right? Like I was gonna go to Greece to meet him in Sweden. I can't track this guy down. So it went to a point where I had no money. I had a falling out with my partner. All the insurance policies that I was producing at the time, they were all caught up in underwriting. I would not get paid. I had rent to pay, and then I got into a car accident and I crashed into a Bank of America. Now, listen to this. Listen to this. One day I walk out, the car's not there. What happened?
Repoed. Yeah.
After 2 years, I thought they wrote that Prius off. I got it from Massachusetts. They repoed it in Illinois. The look of defeat. What if your car was repoed? Let's just hypothetically, it would never happen to you. But if that was the case, if your car was, what would be your first course of action if your car was repoed?
To sit down and cry.
Sit down and cry. But who would you call?
My mom.
Your mom. And then?
Well, your dad, I guess.
The police?
No, the repo company. Right?
I probably would think that it was stolen, and I'll call the police and say somebody stole my car, because I don't know what the difference is between repossession.
I didn't pay the car off. So the bank, when I got into the car accident, they updated my address. And when they updated my address,
they found the car.
The bank that owns the car, they came back and they found the car and they took it.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
My next call was to Qatar Airways. I didn't even bother retrieving the car.
Yeah, I said I
need my next flight back. He said, "Sir, the next flight is in 4 hours." I said, "The next flight. Put me on it. I'm done. And I go back. I'm like, what's next for me? I was crushed. I mean, crushed. 29 years old. And
was that like your dark night of the soul? Like
that
events?
was that. Had I not been in so much pain, it's always what's that saying? It's always darkest before dawn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One I've heard I've heard a mentor of mine say that the scariest number is the number 9. Because you're breaking from a new decade to another. I was 29 at the time, and I was like, wait, hold on.
Man, I'm 39. I don't know what that means.
But don't trust me. This is the reason why the Porsche's outside.
Yeah, well,
it's coming from that. Like that's the last purchase of my 30s. But I felt like a loser, man. I was 29 years old. Like I got nothing going on for me. When am I going to get married? When am I going to have kids? I mean, I got nothing to me. Nothing. I'm 29 years old. I was super defeated. So at that point in time, that's when I heard about our platform in Family First Life. And, that's when I made the decision, because I was like, hey, I really got nothing to lose, man. I mean, this is just not working out for me. And I saw an opportunity, I saw an opportunity, and I communicated at that time. I was looking into like what's going to be next for me. I was listening to a lot of podcasts.
Amazing. Well, now you're here, team's growing, a bunch of killers, everybody working their butts off. What is next for you, Mansoor? What are you going for? What are your goals? We have a few minutes here to wrap up, but what are your goals for the next 6 months? What do you want to accomplish? What's next?
Wealth is what's next. We're very clear in terms of what our direction is going to be. What we have here, and I've said this before, sometimes you could give someone the same toolbox and they build totally different things. There's a lot of agencies inside our platform. There's no agency like our agency. Zero. When I walked into your office and I came out, I couldn't unsee what I saw. It was not something that was easily duplicatable, because you guys are true entrepreneurs in the sense that you've invested a lot of money in order to build this.
And time,
right? And so for us, when we decided to make this move and align with Aria, to us, it was like, all right, this is finally a place where our agents could become profitable and make a lot of freaking money. We live in a time right now where, our country is facing a lot of challenges, economically speaking, right? Where there's going to be a market crash, inflation is off the roof. Who knows if there's going to be another pandemic, are you an essential worker or not? This is the time for people to what? There's a closing window of opportunity. And if you don't get your income, to high 6 figures, then the next decade or so, that might not be the best time to be in the States, in my opinion. But this is the time for the biggest wealth creation is happening right now. The question is, how are you seizing the opportunity? This is a solution for a problem that everybody has. And it's what? You're not making enough money. I don't care how much you're making at your job. Inflation is eating your income up. So what is your strategy for you to face inflation? What is your strategy? What is your position from an upcoming crash? What happens if there's a next recession and you end up getting that phone call and they're telling you, hey, we're going to have to let you go. The whole department is gone, including me. I'm sorry, right? Well, what's your answer to all these problems that we're facing? A lot of people in the States right now are left with what? With these questions unanswered. But we have an answer. Why? Well, because the insurance industry is rock solid. Doesn't depend on... When was the last time you worried about inflation? Does that change our products?
No, definitely not.
Never.
Right?
Of course not.
When was the last time you worried about a recession happening? We make more money in times of recession.
Yeah. It's recession proof.
Why? Because people want the opportunity where they get to control their time. They get to control their income. No job out there is going to pay you what inflation is right now. No job out there. So now you're forced to do something outside of that. Everybody has a full-time job, a part-time job, and then a side gig. Hey, enough with that stuff, right? So we know that we have a solution in place. We're not going to wrap up the year before we scale our agency to $1 million a month. Okay, that's happening. But what's next for us is we want to build. Our goal is to disrupt this insurance industry. And by disrupt, I mean there is, in the landscape of the insurance industry right now, there is no one that I'm aware of that's doing what we're doing. No one. And there's a lot of people that need our help that just don't know about us. So we're going to build the biggest agency out there, man, and show people a different avenue for them to take back control, remove, the concern of inflation off their finances, and help a lot of people in the way to show them a path for financial freedom.
That's awesome. Mansoor, we're going to wrap it up. We went a little over time, but it's always a pleasure sitting down with you and having these conversations. If
Absolutely.
Anybody wants to get in touch with you and work with you, how can they do that?
Well, shoot us a text, 617-233-1613. We obviously don't work with anyone. We want to make sure that it's the right fit. The agency is expanding, but the time that we give to anyone out there is time that we're taking from other people too. So if you're someone out there who's really serious about leveling up your finances and turning 2024 into your best financial years ever, and you're willing to go through the hard work and the grit and you're coachable, right? Then perhaps we should have a conversation. You could follow me on Instagram. It's The Sheikh. Sheikh is SESHEIKH. I'm still waiting.
You have to think about that one for a second. We'll spell check that,
yeah,
and we'll add we'll add your handle on there.
There you go. So yeah.
Well,
Cool.
we didn't get to talk about how we met, but we're gonna do another podcast and we'll get into it.
Yeah,
'cause
there's
it's too
just
much
too
of a
much.
good story.
Yeah, there's too much that we
For
have to
sure.
talk about, and we'll talk about that.
Well,
next time.
thank you so much, Mansoor.
Thank
It
you for
was a
having me.
pleasure having you with us here. We'll do it again.
Okay. I wanted to put Mansoor there and again, and then I'll put me on the screen now, and then I'll say, follow us for more tips on business, entrepreneurship, insurance, whatever you want to do. Hit us up, ask us some questions if you want to know anything and what our insight on anything business and entrepreneurship. You can do that. And Viv's looking at me like,
can we record this again? Because this is like whatever you want to do is like not really how you want to answer.
no, I think that it's off the cuff and it's great, and we're gonna roll it exactly like this. Whatever you guys want to do, we'll do it. It's all good. Mansoor, thank you so much for being here, and we'll do it again sometimes. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Growth Circle with Vivian and Adriano.
Oh yeah,
There you
baby.
go.
Catch you guys on the flip side.